Hey everyone, this is Mike Wolf. We are here for another editorial podcast here on The Spoon. We are without our good friend Jen Marston today. She's off gallivanting in Spain at a food tech conference. But we do have Chris and Catherine. Chris, how you doing, man?
Well, I've been better, but I'm here.
You're coughing.
Don't make me laugh.
Don't make you laugh. Catherine, you don't have any bugs, do you? You're not sick?
Not that I'm aware of.
Catherine sounds in the distance because she's recording on an old mic, so we apologize. That's my fault for not telling her we're recording a podcast today. But we're doing one in quick, impromptu fashion because Catherine and I are heading out to New York City tomorrow. But we wanted to record a podcast and talk about some of the breaking news, including this story you wrote about, Chris, about Housewares show, aka the Inspired Home Show, which I hate that name, by the way.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't even realize they had changed the name. People had always talked to me about it as Housewares, and because I wasn't going this year, I didn't pay that much attention to it. So when I saw, was it the Ideal House?
It's the Inspired Home Show, which is I don't like it. I think it's a bad name. I think everyone still calls it the Housewares Show, but that's not why we're talking about them. They actually canceled the international sourcing component or expo component of their show due to coronavirus, which I thought was newsworthy. You wrote this story, Chris. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So what's important to realize is that there are 5 expos in the as part of the Splendid Home Show, the Inspired Home Show, right? What you should actually know is, for those that have never been, it is a massive convention where basically every player in the houseware space comes out and buyers come out, people show their products. You know, we had a special smart kitchen set up there a couple of years ago where we did interviews, and there's a whole smart home area. There's, especially as it relates to food tech stuff, just basically every appliance maker is there. If you have a product that you want to get made, you take it there. That's where the buyers are. And now the sourcers, right, where you get those products made. And they have 5 different expos that go on, but the sourcing expo is actually put on. It's houses usually. I think it's something like 7 Chinese pavilions. And so what they did is, because of coronavirus and sort of all the travel restrictions that go along with that, and just general fears as the virus continues to spread around the world, is that they decided to cancel that part of the show. So one of the 5 expos is not happening, which is not just a big deal when you think about it, right? It's this massive show that everybody in the business goes to. But then you got to think, and then what? Which is, well, if people can't go and make those deals there, how does that then delay things down the line? Not even considering just the general slowdown that's happening with manufacturing in China because of the virus anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and this happens with a backdrop today that the stock market dropped 1,000 points. There is the first kind of real significant outbreak outside of China in terms of in South Korea, as well as Italy, which that kind of made the news this weekend. And this comes a couple weeks after the Mobile World Congress was canceled, which that to me was like a big sign. Mobile World Congress is the biggest mobile event in the world, and they canceled the entire show. Now, Housewares Show, it's pretty much the go-to show for housewares. So any sort of appliance that gets put on a countertop, and so that it's a fairly big deal. They haven't canceled the whole thing, but I thought this was significant and just shows you kind of the ongoing ramifications. And to your point, Chris, what is the ripple effect? What happens next as things are canceled and things like sourcing, not being able to get to China is a big deal. I actually was emailing with one of the companies we write about, and they have a Kickstarter campaign that a couple of years ago, they're still trying to get their product to market, and they're in manufacturing in China. And they've said that their production lines in China have basically been in lockdown for the last couple of weeks. So I think the story around coronavirus continues. It could be, quite frankly, the story of the year.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think, as we see it pop up in more countries, unfortunately, this is going to be the dominant story for at least the first half of the year, if not the entire year, because we're going to have, like you said, the ripple effects that go on. And if you look at Kickstarter, there are a ton of projects, because they all go to China for manufacturing. So, it was the Chinese Lunar New Year, which was the big thing that everybody kind of braces you for. But then this cropped up, and it is really, what it reminded me, Mike, of you remember the Sequoia PowerPoint that came out like a decade ago?
Yes.
The doom and gloom one,
yeah.
where it's just like, I'm just hoping that everybody learned from that last retraction. I just hope people are prepared and have like cashed up and can weather this downturn so that these products can get to market and that these companies can survive and we don't have massive layoffs. Like this is still all unfolding. We're going to see what's happening because of this outbreak.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was looking at a growth rate chart of the swine flu, which actually it took longer to gestate, but the swine flu actually had a huge spike in deaths and cases. That looked similar in terms of like growth rate in terms of coronavirus, but like the death rate for swine flu actually seemed a lot higher. So, but in retrospect, the swine flu was like 10 years ago, and you don't really think about it that much. I mean, not to say that this won't be in kind of looking back through the rearview mirror won't be a big deal, but it's weird how this stuff you just either forget about it or just like time goes on and you don't remember the impact of it.
Fun fact: this is Catherine. I had the swine flu.
You actually had the swine flu?
Yeah, they quarantined me. I was at college.
Yikes. Oh my gosh.
It was pretty rough. But yeah, it's true. I literally forgot about that until you said something about it. I was like, oh yeah, I had that. But it was truly.
You had the swine flu and forgot about it. Now, this was like college, it's about 10 years ago now?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. I know.
So, I think that's going to continue to be the story. We'll continue to cover it here at the Spoon. I think fairly big news. I am actually going to Housewares or Inspired Home Show, so I'll be reporting from the show. It's in just a couple weeks. But there is other news out there. One of the stories you wrote about, I actually really thought this was interesting, Catherine. This initiative by Starbucks, McDonald's, testing waste-free cups in the Bay Area. I just continue to think and see how sustainability and kind of reducing waste continues to be just an ever-growing massive macro trend in the food space, and including packaging. And so this initiative called the Next Gen Cup Challenge, I thought was interesting. So tell us about the story.
Yeah, sure. So it's an initiative called the Next Gen Cup Challenge, which is the first project by the Next Gen Consortium, which includes, as you said, McDonald's and Starbucks. Other big names like Coca-Cola and Nestle are in there, and it's kind of managed by closed loop partners that focuses on sustainability. So they've been working on their first project, for 2 years. It started in 2018, and it was all focused on ways to cut down on cup waste, specifically coffee cup waste, because according to a couple statistics I read, we produce over 250 billion paper cups per year globally. And even the ones that you think are recyclable, that you're throwing in the recycling bin, they often have this plastic lining in them to keep the cups from leaking, which means that they're actually not recyclable. It's just sort of something we feel good about, but we're not really keeping very many out from the landfill. So this initiative is focused on actually cutting down on that huge waste stream. And they're kind of doing it in two different ways. They're just debuting these new test products this week, actually, starting in the Bay Area. And a few in San Francisco and Palo Alto are doing reusable cups. So you get your cup, it's like made of heftier stuff than just paper, use it for your coffee, for your latte, and then when you're done, you drop it off at one of the designated drop-off points where it's sanitized by the Next Gen group and then brought back. And then they're simultaneously running some demos over in Oakland, which uses these truly recyclable paper cups, which don't have that pesky plastic lining inside of them. So they're kind of approaching it from two different angles and seeing if one is easier for the consumer, easier for the cafe. I mean, personally, I kind of think that the fully recyclable ones will be better, because while people may have aspirations to actually do using a reusable cup, sometimes it's harder said than done for getting to return them, etc. So I'm really excited to see how it goes. As you say, Mike, there's a lot of innovation in the waste-free space, be it food waste or packaging waste. The packaging waste is one where you can make a lot of changes that don't necessarily ask the consumer to do more work. And so I think that it'll be a lot easier to adopt.
Yeah, and I mean, this comes on the heels of, I think, Starbucks making the announcement that they plan to be waste free, I think in like maybe a 10-year time frame or so. I mean, I don't know if it's related to this particular announcement. Let me ask you this. I think that both, Chris, I know that you were using your own straw, kind of reusable straw.
Making the world a better place one sip at a time.
Yes. And let me ask you this, like, because I've wanted to do that, but I still have not moved to like my own straw. I actually still sometimes, I hate to say this, use like the coffee cups that Starbucks gives me. So I feel bad about that. But are you using the gasps from the audience? Chris, are you using your metal straw still?
Oh yeah. I mean, but honestly, I don't go out for coffee that much or tea. I drink it all at home. So I use a mason jar and a stainless steel straw. But yeah, I use it every morning. It's great. And I also got my wife for Christmas a bunch of silicone straws for traveling. So when she does, because she travels quite a bit. So, at the airport, instead of using a plastic straw, she can at least use a silicone straw. And what I think is also interesting, I think this is interesting for a couple of other reasons too, is it follows Blue Bottle, which is also in the Bay Area, which is going waste free, right? And going with the removal or reusable cups. But then there was also a story today, I think, in the Wall Street Journal about how glass is making a comeback.
As a recyclable material.
Yeah, it says it's right here, like against the backlash against single-use plastics, and so glass is sort of infinitely reusable. It's safe to use, other than like obviously falling and shattering into a million pieces. I mean, obviously it has drawbacks as well. Things like it's heavy and it does break. But there are, for like the first time in forever, evidently, there are new glass making factories going online because of this backlash. And so these are all, you see this, and then the same thing with like Loop using reusable canisters for, things like, I think, deodorant and ice cream and detergent. That's happening on the East Coast and spreading elsewhere across the nation. So, we're hitting a tipping point. I don't know. Maybe, the economics of it will work in its favor this time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a demand for it from consumers. They want something that's more sustainable, but people don't want to have to change their habits that much. I mean, I think your point about having these reusable straws to take with you to go, that's really cool, but there's not very many options there. Like, I've never been in a coffee shop and seen someone whip out the reusable straw before. I think that's awesome. Like, more people should be doing that. I should be doing that.
Yeah, maybe take a look in the mirror.
I know, right? But sometimes, I'm lazy sometimes. And if I take this reusable straw and I get like a milky drink, and then how do I clean it? And I'm just carrying it around. Like, the easier they can make it for people to adopt this, either through reusable cups that have all of these drop off and pickup points, or through these cups that are just truly compostable, truly recyclable, glass bottles. I've seen like water in cans is a big thing, because that's really easily recyclable. That's what's going to make this big difference. And, having these big partners like a Starbucks, like a McDonald's on board shows that they're ready to put their name behind it. Whether they're going to fully roll it out to all their cafes, I think that remains to be seen. It's really in the early testing phases. But, Mike, as you said, Starbucks specifically is looking at, I think it's a 10-year timeline to become like waste free. So this is really them testing out if that's going to be viable.
We're horrible as consumers.
We're all the worst. Yeah.
We're horrible people. We don't change our behavior. So we need the companies to do it. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I'm old enough to remember, Chris, I don't remember when McDonald's still had those styrofoam Big Mac containers. Like,
oh yeah, the McDLT.
Yeah, and I remember when McDonald's like announced they're going paper. I'm like thinking, great, but also like, what took you so long? But like, that was massive. Think of it's been at least 10 years. Like, all that styrofoam they haven't put in to the waste stream. Kudos to them. I was most of the time when I go to a restaurant in Seattle now, it's a paper straw if they do even hand out a straw. Mm-hmm. So the restaurants changing is just such a big part of the challenge, because consumers just don't change their behavior very quickly.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I writing all this stuff now makes me, every time I go into the store to buy something, I just go like, oh, this is just all plastic. Mm-hmm. And so I will opt for a can when I can. Har har. But like, I was sick over the weekend and was looking for Gatorade, and the only thing, Gatorade only comes in plastic things. And it's like, well, which is the least worst plastic thing I can pick up?
Yeah.
But right. I think, yeah. So, I mean, I don't. I would like to see more glass bottles and stuff in there. But
speaking of actual people using their own bottles, water bottles, and carrying them with it, I see a lot of people carrying their own water bottle nowadays, and particularly young kids. Like everyone in my kid's school carries a water bottle. But there was a story I wrote about this morning that actually fuses this trend of like carrying your own kind of water bottle with this trend that people just drinking more and more seltzer water or more fizzy water. And there's a company called iDrink. They make a product called the Drink Mate, which is a home carbonation machine. And for some reason, they felt like these two trends should merge. And so they created basically their own portable water bottle that actually can insert CO2 into the water on the go. So if you really like your sparkling water, if you really like making your own, there is now a solution for you, and it's called the InstaFizz. And so I thought it was an interesting product. I'm not exactly sure how big a market there is for it. Catherine, would you want your own portable water bottle that you can actually carbonate the drink on the go?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely have that, my, water bottle. I think also living in Seattle where people are, more quote unquote conscientious. If you don't have your own reusable water bottle, you kind of get some glares. So I have my water bottle. I like it, but I love the carbonation. It's just so fun. So I do buy cans of La Croix, whatever, which is fine, but that adds up and I don't always have it around. So if I could just portably fizzify my water, that would be awesome. I'm all about it.
Fizzify is the word.
Yeah. The technical term.
What I was wondering about, Mike, is that if I'm assuming that it would be fine, but if you could use flavored water. So like I'm hooked on the Spindrift. Can't get enough of it. The lemon, the grapefruit. Oh, so good. But like I would too find, this is such a first world thing to say, right? Like so bougie to say well, water is really boring. But, it's like, it's just everywhere. That's horrible to say. But like, I too enjoy the third dimension that a nice effervescent drink brings.
Yeah.
And so I'll put a Spindrift in the car and take it with me. But if I leave it there, it's going to go flat.
Right.
And there's no real way to, I don't know. I could pour it into a thermos, I guess, but that seems sort of weird. So I'm curious about just sort of more the mechanics of this device, the InstaFizz, because it seems cool. But you still have to use like a cartridge. And I'm assuming that's like a single use cartridge. And then hopefully those can get recycled. And then, just how much does because the vessel itself is like $60, right, Mike?
Yeah, it's not cheap. And so I think that's a little bit of a hurdle because it's about the same price you could probably buy like one of the smaller soda streams for. I think that, yeah, and it does leave a little bit of a footprint because you do have what appears to be single use cartridges. But you could basically carbonate anything and make anything fizzy if you have coffee or whatever. I found like if I have the hammer, I'm going to hit the nail because I actually have one of these sparkles where I've actually been able to kind of a home carbonation machine I've been trying out. And I went for a while there. I was basically putting carbonation into everything, whether it's coffee, whatever. So I definitely you guys like the fizziness. Maybe I've started adding fizziness to pretty much everything after a while. But I think there's a use for it, but I also wonder how many people would do it on the go versus maybe just having like a soda stream either at work or on their counter at home. I think it's a very specific use case where you can't get somewhere where you have one of these and want to do it on the go. Maybe you're camping or something, but
I think people would use it on the go. Like I, commute during the day, or if you're just working out of like a co-working space like I do that doesn't have something like that, but you want to be able to do it. Like, I think it actually would be more popular than you believe. I'm wondering, especially if, I want to invest in a soda stream for some reason. I've been pulled the trigger on it because I don't know. I don't need
same reason as
it.
the silicone straws, evidently.
I know, God, because I'm a bad person.
I think that's
I could do the reuse. I like that. I get the cans and I take them with me. But Chris, you're saying, and I'll forget them somewhere, and then an hour or two later, I'm just like, what's the point? And so if I could get something like this, it kind of would fulfill the need I have for a soda stream, but even better. So I don't know. Yep. I think I'm intrigued.
The other thing though is that this, you can only hold 15.5 ounces, which I shouldn't say only. That's like a soda and a fifth of a soda, right? It's a 12 ounce.
Yeah, it's like one of those bigger soda Cokes. Coke
Yeah.
Bottle, right.
Which is just something to consider because you're using this cartridge to charge up what is basically one can and a little more of seltzer.
And how big is it, Mike?
It's 18 ounces, but you can only carbonate 15.5 ounces. So you probably need a little room for the fizz, I guess, is what's
okay. Just in terms of bulkiness too, because if it's really bulky, you're not going to be carting it all around.
It doesn't look overly bulky. It looks like just kind of like typical hydro flask size, and it's a little bit bigger on the bottom because you have to have that cartridge in. They have a little twist at the bottom that you insert the cartridges in, but it doesn't look super big. So, Chris, that one Mojo coffee maker. Now that seems kind of big for portable coffee. Like this doesn't seem too big for people who carry their water bottles. So, because I did think of the Mojo coffee brewing machine, right? This kind of portable coffee maker, which always felt like the footprint's kind of big.
Well, also Mojo has to be plugged in. It doesn't have a battery. Right. So the Mojo use case is you are in your car or you are somewhere else at your desk or whatever, and you can brew a cup of coffee in your thermos, but it doesn't have battery power. So this is truly on the go, the InstaFizz. Plus it has a fun name, InstaFizz.
Right. Because also with the coffee, like maybe it is arguably better, but you could also just put coffee in with a nice thermos and it'll stay warm. The InstaFizz, to me, the appeal is that you don't have to drink the can of fizzy water in, 30 minutes or else it's done. You can sort of let it linger.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe change my mind a little bit. Catherine, you sound like you're in the business. You want to be in the Instant Fizz business.
Oh yeah.
So maybe I'm changing my mind. Maybe I was wrong. Speaking of being wrong, convince me that I'm wrong, that we don't necessarily need another plant-based burger. Maybe Cargill, because they're so big, will succeed in this, but it seems like if you're going to bring out a plant-based meat, why would you do another burger? Cargill seems to think that there is space for another plant-based burger. Tell us why they think that's so, Catherine.
I will. So for people who don't know, basically Cargill, the huge food and agriculture giant, just announced that it's going to be developing and selling its own plant-based burger and ground beef in both retail and food service starting in April. So pretty quick turnaround. Obviously, I can't even necessarily argue with you, Mike. I don't think that there is a need for another plant-based burger. I mean, I haven't tasted their offering yet, so I don't know if it, really emulates beef in a way that Impossible or Beyond don't. But as we've talked about pretty extensively on the podcast, I think that they do a pretty good job of it. So I don't necessarily see that there needs to be a new iteration. But what is just interesting to note is that Cargill is gigantic and they're really sort of animal focused. They make a lot of soy and corn for cattle feed, and yet they have also invested in some pea protein companies in the past and now are oh wait, we should be getting our own product out there. And they're not the first people to do it. We've seen other sort of animal agriculture oriented companies hopping on the plant-based train. We have Tyson, we have Smithfield, the pork producer, even other just giant food companies like Unilever and Nestle have acquired companies that are making plant-based meat. So I don't think there's anything really shocking about this announcement. It'll really just be interesting to see how it tastes, because they have such large reach and such amazing scaling capabilities, because they're global and ginormous, that they're going to be able to muscle out and find a spot on your retail shelf.
What's so interesting is I can't think of a company that is more industrial food than Cargill. If they think of a company that you would say is such kind of part of the status quo of food, right? I oftentimes think of Cargill, and not to insult them, they've just been around for a while. They're huge. So what's interesting to me is they're doing this. You wonder if they're almost working at odds against maybe another part of Cargill, because they're such a big conglomerate, that maybe is talking down plant-based stuff. Is there a possibility there's another part of Cargill that's paying some sort of lobbyist who's maybe putting out that the word that plant-based meat is too processed? You know what I mean? It's interesting that such a traditional player is getting into this, but it also seems like it's the type of traditional player that I would expect maybe that is saying, hey, don't forget our traditional stuff.
Right. I think they're still saying that. In the press release today, they were very clear they're investing, they invested $100 million in this pea protein company. They're rolling out their own line. But within the past 5 years, they've also invested $7 billion in animal protein. So, compared to that, I think they're basically saying, we're still an animal protein company. Like, we're still the Cargill you know and love, but we're going to try out something here. And just, it's so low risk for them to make and put this out there. It's almost sort of expected at this point for these big meat companies, Tyson, Purdue, to become branded as protein companies and say, we're not just meat. Like, you're a flexitarian, we can cater to you too. But I don't think they're trying to move away from their core business.
Well, Catherine, I was wondering, you said this is going into retail and restaurants, but these are all like big, you're not going to order a Cargill burger, right? You're just going to order a school cafeteria, or, you're going to order some big industrial side, I don't know, some commercial restaurant. Like, you're just going to order the plant-based burger, and it won't be the Impossible Burger, and it won't be the Beyond Meat burger, right? But it'll just be their plant-based burger is how I kind of envision it. But I just didn't know how that played into sort of retail. Because when I think of industrial, like, they just want to move things at a massive scale. And so, they probably have customers saying, hey, we need a plant-based option because all these millennials are griping about the planet. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, we have all these, I'm all in on the plant-based burger now too. And I'm far from millennial. But I just wonder, like, they're working at such a, like you said, like at such a scale, they're just putting out a product there that into their supply chain that people, just want.
Right. And I think, as you say, it makes the most sense. I can see them working the best in these sort of giant cafeteria things, or like airlines, or places where you're not necessarily being like, where is this meat or plant-based meat coming from? I'm just going to order the veggie burger. Looks great. But I don't know. I don't know enough about Cargill specifically to know what other sort of like branded products they have on the shelves, if any. I doubt this is their first entry into retail, but how are they going to be branding it? Are they going to make up a new name for it, or are they going to just put Cargill? Because that would be sort of jarring for people, I think, to be like, Cargill, plant-based burger. What is happening?
Like, meat burger. I want the Cargill plant-based burger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
We live in a world, like, we just writing about food tech and talking about Impossible and Beyond for so much, like, we've just kind of gotten used to this, like, branded beef or alternative to beef. Like, but in the world of beef, like, I've been eating hamburgers my whole life. I mean, McDonald's, right? Like where you buy it, but you don't actually generally know where the actual meat's coming from. So this is actually kind of a new world we're living in. And then, so to, I guess, your point, Chris, like, maybe we're just going to eventually get to the point where it's a little more commoditized. You just have plant-based meat places, but you don't necessarily know where it's coming from. And Cargill's anticipating that world.
Mm-hmm.
If the growth trends indicate, people are just going to want like the non-meat option, and they're just going to want to know, does it have meat in it? Nope. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, depending, there'll be obviously different tiers of that, but that just seems like, there's got to be some mass player in there. Because especially because, as Catherine wrote in her piece, Beyond and Impossible have had shortage supply issues.
Yeah, but Impossible at the same time is in Burger King, and it's sort of like, how much more mass produced can you get? I mean, they are sort of the artisanal option here, but they're also in fast food. And yes, they are a premium. They're an extra $1, but theoretically, as they amp up their production, they'll get less. So maybe Cargill's just strategy is going to be undercut everybody, make a product that's totally fine tasting and could be on a McDonald's menu or in, a giant office cafeteria that you're not asking where it's from, and just be super cheap. And that is their value add.
I have to wonder, I mean, at least today, is my mind going to change? Like, I want to know, is it Impossible? Because, I like Impossible better than Beyond. Like, that's my personal preference. Beyond's fine. But maybe we get past that world. Maybe it's just like, oh, this is a plant-based burger and it tastes good. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, Impossible has certain patents and they have like their heme-based kind of approach, but seems fairly proprietary. And like, I'd be interested to see if like a Cargill plant-based burger could get towards that flavor. And like, as we move to, like, I felt like the pork is fantastic. Like the Impossible pork is fantastic. Like, will Cargill be able to replicate that? I don't know. I mean, they're not talking about pork yet, but like, these startups here, like, do products that have, alternative, have tastes in their alternative products is very specific to them, I feel like, at this point. So it'll be interesting to see if that could be truly commoditized.
Especially since Cargill is so global. They didn't talk about this in the release, but I could see them really targeting areas that aren't the US, which is so sort of brand interested right now with Impossible and Beyond, like offering a super cheap plant-based option to other areas of the world that maybe aren't as like seduced by saying, oh, Impossible, we know who they are, we want that, just offering a really cheap option.
We'll see. Well, we'll be in New York. Maybe we'll pick up an Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger while we're there.
You got to get a Dunkin' sausage patty.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, I've had them. They're pretty good.
With the just egg or something. I don't know.
Yeah. We put them all together. Or what else is in New York that's exciting? You know, I still haven't tried the the end. It's a boring place. I haven't tried the new the Impossible sausage at Burger King. I think that is in New York. I'll have to double check. But Mike, we could do a little breakfast taste test, smorgasbord of all plant-based meat.
I'm on board with that.
Let's do it.
Definitely. I actually like all the sausage options I tasted in terms of the plant-based stuff from Beyond and Impossible. Or at least Beyond. I don't know if Impossible has one. Although the pork that I tried from them was good. So they did a sausage. Did they do a sausage at CS?
They did, and they have a breakfast croissant sandwich with Burger King that has regular egg, regular cheese, and then their plant-based pork sausage on a croissant.
So we'll be there. We'll have a little taste test, and we'll be reporting from there. Chris will be holding down the fort here in Seattle. But if you guys are going to be in New York City, hit us up. We'll be there. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
You guys have fun. Come back.
All right, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.